Hello, I'm Lavanya from Testsigma. So there are so many competing thoughts on software testing and especially on the roles that we take. And some of us self-define ourselves as software testers. And if testing is an activity and quality is a whole team responsibility, then who are the testers and where do we fit in? So are there any boundaries and should they exist? I'm going to indulge in discussing some thoughts and asking some questions. And we have an exciting panel with us today. The people at the forefront who witness this transformative journey share their first-hand experiences and discuss the emerging trends they see unfolding. So a very warm welcome to Anna Royzman of the Test Masters Academy, Nicola Martin of BCS Sigist, and Mahesh Chikane of the Test Tribe, and Richard Bradshaw of Ministry of Testing. Welcome everyone and thanks for joining us today. Hi. Hello. Thanks. Okay. So let's start with, before starting, let's just introduce you to Testsigma. So we'd like to call Testsigma an operating system for quality. So Testsigma is open source and low code. So using Testsigma, QA teams can create automated tests using English statements. And in a nutshell, customers have successfully executed Testsigma for automating web, desktop, and API tests, UI and database tests using a low-code approach. And this product is available as a cloud, local SaaS, on-premise, and open source offering. So we'd request you to try out Testsigma, and the link is testsigma.com. Okay, so today's topic, we cover the QA community backed by these awesome people, testing, whose responsibility is it? And if quality is a team responsibility, then where do testers fit in? We talk of quality assistance, which is now being replaced by, quality assurance is being replaced by quality assistance now. We talk about roles and the fancy titles. And now we are also discussing if testing is changing with the epoch of AI. And are testers no longer needed? Is this a concern? So all of this with this amazing panel. So if you have any questions, please, you can ping them on the Q&A bar and we will take it up towards the end. And we'll also be sharing a recording after the webinar. So my first question to you is the QA community. So from where you started and where you are at now, what's new and what's extinct and what's coming? So who wants to go first?
I think it has to be Richard because
Richard? Okay.
Okay. The number of years that he has seen through MOT.
It's a massive question, that though. What's new and what's coming? I would say, like your bullet points that you have on the screen, like the role of a tester or the role of a QE or the role of a test manager, or all these roles that exist, they're all significantly going to change. The biggest thing I would say is that the diversity in the way that we build software is only ever increasing and becoming ever more complex. So the roles I feel are going to continue to shift. But I feel as a community, I think the biggest focus that MOT is trying to do is around education. I don't think it matters what your title is or who's doing the work. Really good testing has to take place no matter who's doing it. And I think as an industry, we're starting to see a lot more options in the education space. A lot of the existing education opportunities are starting to reevaluate themselves and improve and update their material as well. And I think as a sector, we need to try and be on top of that. So yeah, I expect to see a lot of change in the education space. I think that's probably the hottest topic.
Okay, great. Do you want to take that, Nicola? How, according to you, has the QA community evolved? Or what do you see extinct?
Well, I've been in the industry for over 20 years, just generally in tech, but I've been in testing for almost all of that. So I've seen lots of changes, lots of things come and go. I would say this is probably the most active I've seen the community, but I've also seen just so much distress amongst people, just worried about what the future holds because of everything that's happening now. You're living under a rock if you're not aware of large language models and ChatGPT, etc. And that is a key issue that comes up in every conversation I have whether that's with mentees or with agencies around roles that are available. I couldn't tell you what I think is coming next. The thing I would say is that people shouldn't worry necessarily. I think where we were 6 months ago when there was a huge worry about where the roles were, I think that's died down a bit now. And I fully agree with Richard about education. The changes that we're seeing there, whether that's boot camps, upgrading their training courses, or even universities looking at the syllabus that they offer to developers, especially on computer science courses, for example, and they are trying to add more around quality and testing, because historically it's not been that way, and just to make people more rounded in terms of their skill set when they come off of courses and out of university. And I think that's key, because I think what's really happening is that more people, different roles, are now responsible for testing as well.
Okay. Anna?
To me, QA community is more of a support and experience sharing and idea sharing. And I deeply respect what Richard does in his space. I do believe in education, and I believe that education should come from the people you trust. And I believe that MOT is doing exactly that. Because there is, historically, testing was such a field that there was a lot of, we used to call it fake testing. I don't know how it's called now. Yeah. But basically the notion of the testing could be faked. It could be like substituted with a lot of documents or a lot of process, and the skills could be hidden under or not even expected. And I hope that this is changing, because there was so many, and the test tribe is another example of people who bring the expert you trust to the spotlight. And I really appreciate all the communities, and I've been in several events with some community builders. Last year I was in New Voices reality show. It was an amazing experience for testers as well. But I feel that each community is creating something special. And if you have a need, then you go to a special community for this type of learning or meeting people, something like that. To me, I don't know if you know how I started. I pretty much started with building a conference for test leaders, not for the testers. And then I started doing the tester conferences, but my first one was for the test leaders. The reason I did it is that I noticed that in usual testing conferences, the test leads, test managers, they didn't have much to get from, but there were so many experiences that they could exchange. There were so many ideas that they could like discuss, that I created a space just for them, so that they should be talking about leadership only in testing space. And that's how my Test Masters Academy was built. So I'm taking a little bit different perspective on like what community is. But I know that there is a lot of people who met each other and become friends and become like supporters, mentors to each other through my conferences. So this is how my take on QA community. What is the role?
Okay, great. Mahesh, you want to add to it?
I think wonderful thoughts, like education, I know, as all of them mentioned, is at the center of what we are doing, and it's going to be the center stage for whatever changes. The need for education, what you learn may change, but the need for education will always stay there. So as an industry, again, like as you know, Richard says, as Nicola added, Anna added, it is, as we said, there are decades where nothing happens, like not nothing literal sense, but little happens, and there are years where you see the decades happening. So I think last few years, as I see, at least in this part of the world, is things are changing at crazy pace. And a lot of things that we thought, okay, we as a whole industry, that we have more time to react to all the changes that we're doing, how the industry is demanding testing or what is expected out of a tester, how the job descriptions are changing. That is changing at a rapid pace. I think the best that communities can do in such time is reflecting, because like we are just bringing people close to the truth that already exists. So, for example, the truth for the change, like what sort of change is happening, like bringing that to their notice, without glorifying or without underplaying it, like as it is. And then the need for the change as well, that okay, this is something which is happening, and how do you react to this thing now? Like what are the next few steps that you can do, and how do you prepare yourself for future? Like you can't really 100% prepare yourself for anything that is going to come, because things are changing, which are at a pace that we can't predict as of now, at least the way we say AI and everything happening. But the best we can do is reflect these things. And second is then creating the opportunities, so that, while there will be opportunities that will be lost, how do you create a few more and help people create that belonging as well to the craft? Like these are 3-4 things that communities can best do, so that even if it is a tough time or it is a good time, the craftsmen find their belonging, that okay, this is something we do and we're proudly doing it, happily doing it. These are some areas where communities can play a very crucial role.
Okay, great inputs from everyone. So let's first dive into this, to the main topic of our webinar, which is how can quality become a team responsibility? So if you take out testing, then we do the bare minimum, right? So will it not affect the quality of what we are delivering? How can it be a team responsibility? Anna?
How the testing can be a team responsibility? I would rephrase the question: how can it not be a team responsibility?
Okay.
Really? So like there is some cities in this world where it's clean, and there are some cities in this world where it's not too clean. And yes, you can have maintenance people who can clean after you, but ideally the culture of the cities, which are the best cities in the world, is that the tourist knows that there is nothing around. They don't throw they're like paper on the floor. They go, there is like urns or something that you know where to put your garbage. And that's how you maintain the culture of cleanliness. And of course, the things could happen, things are falling from the trees, the leaves, and yes, you can clean it. There is some special events like snow, and yes, you need to clean the streets. But the culture of cleanliness is really the everybody's attitude. So in the same way, testing, it's really picking up garbage from people, and it's not really something that you you can solve all the problem with more testing. The problems where the more testing is needed starts from the process, from the people attitude. So if people are not quality conscious, then of course, they could throw this whole testing to another team and let them do pick after me. But in reality, if you conscious about quality, then testing is part of your responsibility as well. And maybe you're not the best person to do the most skilled testing, which is fine. We do respect specialists, but be testing conscious always is everyone's responsibility on the team. There is no other way around it. That's my take.
Okay. Do you also believe the same, Nicola?
Yeah,
testing?
I do. I think I probably look at it differently, because we, for example, don't call ourselves a QA team. We call ourselves a quality engineering team. Our team, for example, is covering all kinds of different skill sets, not just your traditional testing. So we do DevOps related work within our testing. We also work closely with customer success and UX. So we bring lots of different elements into it. So I see it more as an organization responsibility. And there are people amongst almost every team who could test in some way towards making the quality of the products that your organization produces better. Now, I can say that from the point of view of working in a smaller company. Obviously, in a larger company, that works differently. But I agree that it isn't just a team's responsibility anymore. Those days are gone. And everybody has to have some level of responsibility around quality, and they have to buy into it, because if they don't, the quality of the products will just fail. It can't be the responsibility of a team anymore.
Okay. Mahesh?
Yeah, I think the two words that stayed with me from what Anna and Nicola said, which was very striking, is A is culture, and then second is buy into that culture. For example, a leader can always say that, okay, we are serious about quality from today, but then whether that is going through all the actions and whether the entire organization is ready for that, that's a different story. And as I tell our small team here as well, that when we say quality as part of your culture is what do you do and how you see quality at a very micro level when you're doing some task for, let's say, 5 minutes. Whether you're serious about what you're doing during those 5 minutes is what will define the bigger outputs as well. It can be as simple as answering one question. It can be as simple as writing one function or doing one exploratory test or writing a documentation, anything. What matters is if each member of the organization, irrespective of the function, is serious and committed to that, top quality as a vision or as a target. That is when things start to move. That is when the product managers will start thinking that, okay, even if there is a requirement gathering session happening, how do I write the user stories so well that in one discussion things are clear and we are ready to move. So each function thinking that, okay, it's not the responsibility of some particular function wherein they'll clear most of the garbage and everyone else will probably just iterate over things. That is where the real change is going to happen. So I think it's when we say testing is everyone's responsibility, obviously testing in some form, but what we really mean is that importance that we give to quality, if that is equally distributed and everyone is respecting that with equal severity, for the lack of better word, that is where things will really change, I feel.
So are tester roles being rebranded, or are these roles shifting away? Do you see this happening? Richard?
I don't think the roles are shifting away. I think, just to add on to that last answer, if you try and answer that question without saying testing or quality, you would probably end up saying things along the lines of people doing the best job they can do, people supporting other members of the team, trying to gather as much information as possible. Because I think no one wants to do bad work. No one goes to work and goes, you know what, I'm going to write rubbish code today. You know what, I'm going to write the worst possible story I can do just to annoy Anna, Mahesh, and Nicola. Why not? Right? No one does that. Or maybe someone does that, but very few people want to do that. So I think the roles will change, but I think it's like I said at the start. I think there's, there was a conference right now, a Manchester Developer Conference, and we were talking last night at the speakers' dinner about how agile is kind of dead now. But what we meant by that is that it's not explicitly spoken about anymore, because pretty much everyone is now some sort of agile, right? Because there was just waterfall at one point, and now everyone kind of does what the hell they want. And I think that doing what the hell we want is the problem when it comes to what are the job titles now, what are the roles, what are the responsibilities. I think one of the biggest challenges, or one of the biggest skills that a lot of testers, QEs, QAs, managers, whatever it is, need to quickly start talking about more is the skill that we have when we go into a team and quickly, I call it recon, but quickly understand that context, to quickly identify where's the smallest, tiniest thing I can do right now to improve the quality of this piece of software, or to improve the way this team works, or whatever it may be, just to make this team more efficient than they are. And the easiest way is to say people. What's the smallest thing I can do now to make the people on this team better than they are? And let them then obviously go away and build better software. So the job titles are going to change. I think if I stick to the current market and what we have, I still think there's a place for a tester in a certain context. Some products need really deep testing. Some products are life mission critical. They need incredibly deep testing. And there's only there's only a handful of people who can do that kind of work incredibly well. And they would have an experience in testing. Some people need someone who can do half testing, half automation. Some people just need people who just do pure exploration. Some people need a coach. So I think most of the titles and jobs, I think they're going to become kind of a bit useless and be a bit more, it's going to be more about spotting the impact you can have. But yeah, if you're a quality engineer now, let's say, you should have the authority to be able to improve quality across the whole life cycle. If you don't have that authority or that ability, or there's not processes in place to do that, you are not a quality engineer. You're probably just a tester. I don't like the word just, I didn't mean to say that's a terrible term, but you're likely just going to spend most of your time testing. So therefore, yes, you might be called a quality engineer, but if you were being measured against the community or industry standard for that kind of role, you wouldn't be doing very well if you can't influence other parts of the system, the processes, the culture, to end up with a better quality software. So I still think there's a role for most of the ones we have, but going forward, I do expect us to be more involved in doing different types of testing across the whole life cycle, trying to be an influence for changing in processes and people to have a more focus on quality, because teams want to build quality products. It's also going to get quite crucial to build quality products because your competitors can build products really quickly these days. It's not hard to get something out into the market, or it's easier than it used to be. So having a rival competitor can be quite quick these days and quite damaging to your product.
Right. But how do we ensure this quality is, this is accepted, and how do we bring this quality mindset to our developers and to the others in the team? Have you had any success with that? Anyone?
Well, we have a perfect example. Richard is speaking at Dev Conference. That's one of those.
Yeah.
That's one of the steps, how you make it visible, and you have quality enthusiasts talk to other people, share the passion. Share the passion for quality. That's number one. How else can you do it, Then I would say within your own company, it's a little bit different. You have to have a reputation to change processes and influence. And for the reputation, people look at your work, And that I'm talking from my own experience when I've been a tester, test lead, test manager, test director, test lead, test manager, tester. That was like full circle because we went through agile reformation, and they get rid of all the titles for testers and they demoted them, that they promoted them again. But it's the reputation that stays with you. If you're a good tester and you become a good lead and you succeed as a test manager, then that's the reputation that allows you to influence people around you. When new people come to the company, the reputation stays with you and they know that, hey, this is the person you want to listen to. That's how it goes.
Okay. Can you suggest some good tips? Testers are not often heard, right? So what would be a good few steps that a tester can follow to become a quality coach or a specialist, or to be heard by the team? Nicola?
I think I've got answers for, I've got points on everything that's just been said. Obviously, I will answer your questions about that, but just to, pick up on what Richard said about the roles changing, but it actually not really, I think you said not really changing anything for everyone in, you know, in the industry as such, but the roles will change. I think on the surface, the titles are changing, but the roles are still ultimately the same, whether they're being merged into several roles into one. You know, team leads are becoming managers, and heads of are becoming managers and leads and heads of. I think there's a lot of that kind of merging going on, but I'm also seeing different roles come up. So for example, I saw one a couple of months ago, data scientist, quality engineer. So we've got these kind of weird, nuanced roles that are coming up, which wouldn't normally have been joined together, but equally that means that people could potentially have a different skill set, and they should consider what their skills should be going forward in order to make themselves marketable. As Anna was saying about Richard going to the conference and being, you know, a voice, yeah, outreach is super important. It's really important. Being visible and you know, becoming a thought leader in the space is important. I tend to speak more about tech more generally and diversity topics, but when I need to, I speak about testing as well. But I leave it up to wonderful people like Richard and possibly Anna to speak on things like that. And, you know, ministry post constantly. And then there are other people within the community who are, you know, big voices. And I'm loving to see that what I've seen in the last couple of years, 3 years, since just before the lockdowns, that the diversity of voices has grown. We used to get the same voices all the time. Now I see different voices in ministry doing loads of different events with lots of, you know, people who are, you know, well-known and not so well-known. SIGIS doing events with not so well-known speakers, because we love to give people who haven't had the chance to speak, you know, an opportunity. But, you know, in terms of, I think your last question was about what we can do to, was it about quality and skills? Was that what you asked?
Yeah, so from becoming a tester to a quality coach or a quality engineer.
So I see the quality coach role coming up, but I have had some gripes about it personally, I will say. And some of that is because companies have deemed it okay to get rid of their testers, bring in quality coaches, and maybe not pay them as much because the job is not seen as important. But actually a quality coach is a really vital part of, quality coaching is quite a vital part of what we do, and it should be valued. And that ability to share knowledge and to coach and to, you know, mentor people within the engineering space or wider about good practice in testing, it's vital for any agile projects, definitely, to, you know, go forward and you know, be able to deliver on time, to budget, whatever the situation is. But being able to have somebody as that coach that people trust and understand within the company or within a team, it's vital, and it should be held with a bit more regard than it is at the moment. But I'm seeing that happening slowly, so it's becoming a role that is more vital, I think, for agile projects especially.
Okay. Do you think yes, Anna.
I wanted to mention, because maybe we don't talk about it this much. Quality coach is what we all speakers do. So everybody in this panel are speakers, and we talk about quality. And to become a good speaker, you have to know some things, some skills you have to have. You cannot be just good tester. It's different. The coach is who enables the mentees, the people who they are coaching, to do the right thing, to do the good thing, and to teach them new skills. So when you're in the role of a coach, it's not enough that you're a good tester. It's really a different role. You have to enable everybody to become a good tester. So you have to know how to coach. You have to know certain processes on how the coaching is done. So there is some discipline knowledge under this, the coaching discipline, right? And it's really important that you know, because when I become a speaker, I was afraid of the crowds, you know, and I had a mentor. And the mentor was from our actually our community, but he mentored me on how to behave in front of a crowd. And one thing that he told me, he said, Anna, you know, you're a woman. And in some cultures, when the woman is standing and the man is sitting and she teaches to him, it makes him very uncomfortable. And he said, what you're noticing, and there are some people in your class who start talking too much, and they can agree with you or disagree with you, but in one way or another, they're gonna disrupt you. And you have to be conscious about these cultural differences, and you have to know how to handle that. It's the same thing for the quality coach. You have to know about group dynamics for sure, and you have to know how to handle the group. And this is something which is different from being a tester. When you set the tester in the corner, I don't believe that the tester is always in the corner, but sometimes you want to like less distractions from you and you do your best job. But for the coaches, it's really a different skill set.
But do we have to remove the tester's role and then have quality coaches, change them all as quality coaches, or do we still need a full testing team?
As Richard said, it depends it's the context, you know, different products have different needs. It depends, really. Yes, I cannot say yes or no. It's not a yes or no question.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, yes. just to try and like group some of those last things together in the original question as well. I think I was chatting to Kelsey Hightower this morning, who was an amazing, distinguished engineer from Google, and he told some great stories. But one of the things he mentioned that at Google you get measured based on like if you did more than your expectations. So your expectations are kind of to do your job. So a traditional tester's job is to kind of execute tests, design tests, and report bugs, right? So that's kind of like, I know that's really basic, but that's kind of like an entry level kind of thing for you to do. Now, to move into that quality coaching space, the next step, in my opinion, is you then need to start doing more of the digging, more of the investigation. So yes, I found the bug, but how did it get here? What led to it arriving? What led to me finding it? So, what, not blame game, not that kind of thing, but like, was it that the story was misinterpreted? Did the developer get sidetracked, doing a little bit of refactoring while they were implementing that thing? Like, what happened along that way for this bug to land and, for me to discover this bug? That's one of the first steps you can do, because that's trying to improve the process. So that's kind of that bit, as in discovering why. And then even one step above that is to then facilitate action to stop that happening again. So what can we do? I'm not saying we start dictating and say, do this, do that, but suggesting to the team. And that comes from being able to tell the story. I found this bug would have caused A, B, and C. From my own investigations, I believe it happened because of D, E, and F. I believe if we make changes, this might not happen again. And that's going to save us all time. And then if you really want to go to the next level, you talk the language of your stakeholders. So depending who your stakeholder is, you talk about money, you talk about time, you talk about, I don't know, mean features shipped in a month, whatever your metrics and OKRs are, you talk about them. And then what that shows you and what shows the team is that you're much more than just a bug finder, that you actually understand the whole process and you can narrate it from end to end. So yeah, storytelling and being able to go a little bit further sometimes and investigate why. And again, really want to stress not to blame people. It's not about blaming. It's about to find out what the root causes of a lot of these common problems are. That's where you start to shift from, testing to quality engineering and trying to improve the overall culture and processes, in my opinion.
Okay. Mahesh, do you also
believe? So just to add, like I don't think this entire quality coach trend is a global thing, first of all. At least in India, I don't see that happening. I see a massive shift towards the technical side of things rather. So the gap between, how the traditional testing teams were seen. So the gap between those teams or how they functioned and how the devs function, whether you know the application architecture well, whether you can debug in production, whether you can, have some sort of say and knowledge of your entire CI/CD, DevOps, desktops things. And obviously automation has been a common factor, but it has gone beyond that. So when I say I don't see it as a global trend. I don't mean no one coaches. Someone is doing that coaching. That might be the test manager. That might be the test lead. That might be the test director who is creating that awareness. But test coach as a dedicated role, I don't see that trend everywhere in whatever I am observing, whatever little I am observing. But there is a massive shift happening towards, these roles changing towards the technical side of things. So the line between development and testing, or testing and having the technical knowledge across several functions, that is rather blurring a bit. That's what I would say.
Okay. So we have, I came across this term quality assistance when I was looking into the QA blog by Jira. So there that they refer to it as quality assistance, where the testers are now spending time educating developers to incorporate testing and coaching and overseeing the software quality. So now the testing team is remote, and the developers do testing. So with a method called, they started off by dotting. So have you encountered quality assistance and coaching developers to test their own product? So what do you think about that?
Could I say
I think
something?
me and Nicola laughed at the same time. So let Nicola go.
I'm
first.
laughing.
Yeah,
No,
Nicola.
I'm laughing because Jira got rid of the concept of testers a long time ago. They left us behind a long time ago. I should say Atlassian. But to hear that they have this now is laughable. But there is an element of doing the whole, like we've talked about, coaching teams anyway. So working with your engineers or developers, as you might call them, to make sure that they test in a better way, or to teach best practice, etc. That should be standard anyway, especially if you're working in an agile team. So slapping this new sticker on it and saying, oh, look, we've created this. It sounds like quality assistance to me, sounds like something you call out when your car breaks down or something. I don't know. Call out the quality assistance team, or have no idea. It just seems like a gimmick. I don't know, Richard, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's like a band-aid, wasn't it, to get rid of away from quality assurance. That's what people were doing. Instead of like making massive changes and fundamentally rewriting job specs, people just tried to play with QA. There was question asker for a while. That's what someone else started reframing it as. It's just basically a play on the words. But the thing I didn't actually clock onto the Jira thing. I started laughing with myself because there's always a narrative that developers don't test, and it's simply not true. They might not test as well as we do, but every single developer tests. And just very quick tangent, my whole alias of friendly tester came from talking to a developer. They were like, oh, I can't remember exactly, but it was along the lines of like, we don't do testing. And then I told him I found this bug, and I was watching him debug it. And every time he thought he'd learned something and he'd try something else, I'd be like, whoa, are you doing testing? It's like, no, I'm just debugging. I'm just trying to find the cause of the problem. Oh, okay. And then he'd learn something new and he'd do something else. I go, whoa, you're doing exploratory testing? It's like, no, I'm debugging. Right. And they might call things differently, but they do testing, right? Are they as good as me at testing? No, probably not, because they've not, and I'm not as good at them at developing, right? So again, it's about what we said earlier. Understand the team, find out what the needs in that team are. And then people can obviously start helping the developers test differently. Maybe the testing needs to be more in pre-planning. One of my favorite questions in pre-planning is, how are we going to test this? And I always emphasize the we when I ask it. How are we going to test this, right? And if we have that conversation earlier, maybe we can write down a few automated tests that the developer should build as part of their delivery. Maybe we might write down some exploratory charters ready for when it comes to the tester, or ready when it comes to the developer. Or even I've had the product owner pick up my charters and go, I don't want Richard to find anything, so I'm just going to run these charters before it gets to him, right? Like, well, if you start influencing that change, or start not pushing through, but like emphasizing the kind of testing you might do, people will start doing it because they don't want to do bad work. Like I said it earlier, no one wants to do bad work. So if you start helping them and coaching them, or giving them hints and tips, or even giving them little cheat sheets, there's 1,000 things you can do. They are going to do some of that testing, and it will make our lives easier. But also, as I said, it really depends on the product. Some people don't need testers at all. They don't even need QAs, don't need coaches, don't need anything. Some teams need whole armies of them because it's incredibly complex what they're building and life-threatening and so forth.
Okay. So anyone wants to add, or can I go to the next question?
I can add to what, the quality assistance or what?
Yeah, quality assistance, yes.
So in 2012, I just started speaking at the conferences, and my very first conference was like with the real talk was Mile High Agile, which is Agile conference in Denver. It was the biggest conference in Denver on Agile topic. They have like 8 parallel tracks. And that was like the burst of Agile reformation across all the, IT teams. And 2012. And it was very funny. It was very funny situation because I've been talking about Lisa Crispin was the track chair, and I was speaking on the track chair of testing. I was speaking in testing, and as you understand, there was gazillion of agile coaches, about 100 speakers. And we had a speaker dinner, and they told me, agile coaches told me an interesting story. They say that that's 2012, okay, 10 years ago. They say that agile transformation, get rid of testers, and developers, because there's this agile manifesto where between developer and the customer, nobody should be in between. So the teams got rid of everyone in between. Analysts, testers, designers, everyone, they get rid of it. And then developers realized that they actually need somebody who can teach them testing in one way, shape, or form. That's 2012. And so they kind of start the search for the good testing kind of started because they get rid of testers. They thought that they not needed. I'm seeing the history repeats itself one more time. Every time there's like the circles of like, let's get rid of testers. Oops, I think we need somebody to teach us good testing. Oops, maybe they can do more testing so we can like free up some time for ourselves and develop more good features. Oops, we don't need testers anymore. We're doing well. And it's a circle. So what you're seeing right now is this quality assistance. There's nothing new here. And just look at the history, and we get skill testing, what needed, it will be needed. No matter how you slice it, how much you change the names, and what Nicola said about quality engineers, Microsoft did it in 2013. They get rid of all testers and they call them quality data engineers. So nothing new here because the testing is really needed, and no matter how you change the wording of it or like title of it, it's still the practice of testing that will emerge. We're just watching the history repeating itself.
Yeah, I think as Anna said, these are cycles, but what we can also observe is with each cycle, the expectations are slightly changing. Okay, the cycle will happen, and then, okay, you're a tester, you can test, but can you coach? You're a tester, do you know at least one programming language? You're a tester, but whether you can automate well. And then will you be able to call yourself a state, like not in the definition viewpoint, but a lot of things that real estates will do. Then do you know the entire tech side of your application, like what is that knowledge delta when compared with development teams or other teams that are there. So while these iterations are happening, and these are not necessarily iterations that are happening across years, within a same year also in different type of organization, these iterations are happening. For example, the way Richard said, like there are few companies who don't need dedicated testing teams and they're still doing fine. But it depends a lot on the kind of complexity they have, the kind of culture they have built, whether it is microservice architecture or monolithic architecture, and how they started from day zero. So it all depends, and all these variations that we're talking about are happening today as well in different companies. So there are companies and there are products who still, will need testers like forever due to the complexity and due to the mission critical things they serve. And there will be more and more startups or companies, who have the culture and who have that leverage that, okay, they can experiment with something wherein the testing teams are too small or there are no dedicated testers, but some teams under some name are, doing that quality check, and hence things are moving well.
Okay, great. I have a follow-up question about titles. So we see many titles coming up, like, recently a full stack tester or a chief quality officer. So is there some fancy title that you've come across? And also just a follow-up question, which is, would you take, a job which with a less senior title when moving jobs? Who wants to take this question? Nicola, you want to try?
And one of the new ones I've seen recently, so that data scientist quality engineer role.
Yeah.
And I know people have had to take lesser titled jobs, but they had more responsibility. I will guess they were paid more, but I guess there is a problem with, I know we've said roles don't matter, I think it actually does, because when you are trying to plot your career, it's very hard to do that if you're moving up and down in terms of the type of role that people expect when they read a title. So sometimes the title can be quite important to someone outside the company looking at your CV. Within the company, it might not mean anything at all. Your job might be very varied, and have a number of responsibilities within that. And your career could move quite nicely within the company you're in. But the moment you step outside of that, it's very different. And I've spoken to agencies this year. I've been on conference calls and events with them, and it's been chaotic for them. And they don't know how to advise people.
Yeah, I would add that. Yeah, I would add to that as well. Like, I know I said it, titles don't matter too much, but I've got two experiences really from the MOT community. Martin Hinier did a great talk. It was a long time ago now, must be like 8 years ago, where he experimented with his test team's name. They were the test team, and then they were the technical investigation team, and then they were something else. And the way that the other teams approached them and dealt with them fundamentally changed. When they were just the test team, they weren't, they weren't taught technical with them. They were like, oh, you're this, you're that. And then I can't remember the exact titles he went throughout the talks on Ministry of Testing. If you search for his name, it's free to watch. And he went through that process, and I've seen it myself. I've had job titles where if you don't have manager at the end of it, you're kind of asked to leave the room. I've had ones where you're seeing your people expect you to have the senior on there, which means that you have some sort of experience. I'm talking tomorrow about my career, and I went from junior to senior in a year and a half, right? What are the requirements to be a senior? Like, no one really knows what they are. And then I've recently did an AMA with a recruiter, and she shared something really important as well, which is the flip side of this. If you are moving jobs or you're looking for a new job, then don't be put off by the job title. So read what the person is looking for or the company is looking for. If it says senior and you're like, I'm only a junior, don't discard it. Read what they're looking for. Do you have those skills? Because again, a lot of the time, sometimes it's HR are just picking titles out of thin air. Sometimes there's a reason, there's a structure to it, like a lot of companies have senior, manager, what's the most popular ones now, like staff engineer and principal engineer and all these other fancy titles, right? But in some companies, they mean something. And that career progression, that structure, the pay increases that come with it, yes, they matter. But like I said, also look at what you're expected to do. And if you can do that, apply. And Erin especially said this with regards to diverse backgrounds and women. Sometimes they're immediately put off. They won't even read the job spec because they'll see the title and go, I can't do that. But absolutely read the job spec and then decide if you should apply.
Okay. Mahesh? Is there a fancy title you've come across?
No, I think the not like a recent thing, but this entire thing of full stack tester or full stack QA, that I think is a very fancy thing, because that there are so many things which a real tester would should do. And I don't know, like these are titles, but when you read the job descriptions, what they really mean is okay, you can test like the way so-called manual testing, whether you can automate and whether you know like some programming languages, and okay, that is a full stack for them. They don't even talk about different types of testing, whether you can do all types of testing, and whether you have the viewpoint and experience about that. So as Richard said, like a lot of titles are misleading. When you read the job description, it is same story over and over again. So that's really not changing. And to answer your previous question, I think yes, the titles do matter, because as much as we say, the industry is being driven by the C-level and V-level people, right? Like what they find cool. So if they find like automation to be cool, then like more of their friends, more CEOs, more VPs are going to react to that. And usually we see a trend that happens. If someone says that no, you have a team of estate and then you can really shorten your release cycles and ship quality products faster, that is going to happen, and that will be experimented in more and more organizations. So as much as internal to organization, it may not matter much, and you can still do the job that you're supposed to do. When it comes to job switching, or when it comes to that entire demand supply equation, what you're called in your previous job does matter to a significant extent. And obviously, along with that, you have to prove that you have actually done those things and not just the title that you carry.
Okay, great. Just one question I think I missed, which is there a metric when we do quality as a team? Is there a complementary metric we can track? Other than the test coverage, anything that to see how successful we are as a team?
I can think of two that come from the Accelerate book.
Okay.
I always forget the lady's surname, but Nicola something's one of the authors. That's how I found the Accelerate book. But yeah, the two that I see, if you focus on a team, again, it's not really about testing. It's more, the two I have is mean time to feedback. So how quickly is the team getting feedback on a build so that they're in a position to make a decision about shipping it? So like that the amount of time. So, you hear people talking about 10-minute builds, 15-minute builds, 8-hour builds, overnight builds. But this is more about the team having enough, how long does it take to get enough information to go, I think we can ship it. And then the other really important one is, because we are shipping a lot quicker these days, is the mean time to recovery. So when things go wrong in production, how quickly are we able to get the system either rolled back or back up and running or fix the issues? So I think we start to see metrics which are more about shipping software, and small increments can be happening along the way. I think they're more important than, I don't know, what's the most joke one we usually have, the defect detection rate or whatever it was that people used to have. How many bugs did you find a day? I remember my first job, I had how many test cases can you run in a day? We had all sorts of stupid metrics. Even had someone who used to come in, test cases used to be printed at my first job, and someone would come in half an hour earlier, take the easy test cases, and then go and make coffee. And if you came in late, you would be left with quite the chunkier test cases. So your test case execution for the day was always like, I don't know, 5, right? And someone else's was like 15, and they were viewed as being better than you. But yeah, to answer the original question, I think the metrics for a team, mean time to feedback, mean time to release, mean time to recovery, those kind of things are what I'm seeing people focus on more.
Sure.
I want to add to it. I would measure I would suggest some qualitative metrics, not quantitative. And something like qualitative metrics comes from retrospectives on how the team feels about their work and themselves. And it's not very straightforward, because you have to be a facilitator in order to get the team talk about things. But if the team believes in their retrospectives, if they really do some improvements every iteration, and they feel comfortable, they feel healthy about the process, this is very important metrics. And again, this is something that, first of all, team needs to be open to talk about it, and open to improvement, and committing to iterative improvements. But once they do, open them to talk about all the things that I mentioned. health of the team relationships. I think it's really important, because really nothing can be more important than this state of mind and your state of how to say, how you are reacting to stress. Because we the software development team is a stressful job. It is, right? Bugs that are found in production, built and not compiling, you have to be always in this mental state to strategize, to troubleshoot, to address the problem, to think through the potential problems. It's all mental jobs. It's really heavy mental job. And in order for you to do it really well, you have to be in a certain state of mind, you have to be not in stressful situation, because when people in stressful situation, they get back to their like default state, which is like fight or run. I forgot how you call it. So if you're in a very much stress, you really cannot think through. And I would really measure also the stress level, believe it or not, but it's really important. So one of the metrics is that.
Okay,
I think the only thing that I
yeah.
would want to add is,
Yeah.
I wish there are more formal metrics, like what in a typical world, what you have as net promoter score, and right, like how many other people
Yeah.
will promote the same thing. I wish if these honest ratings come from just enough number of users as you release something to the world. I know the few organizations are doing that, and it is easier said than done, because there are a lot of internal biases involved, even to carry this feedback from customers of facing teams to the actual engineering teams. Because it's like, okay, if you praise a particular release too much, then how will you get that one bug fix that your customer really wants it fixed? So a lot of biases are there. But I feel if we just measure the quality in terms of whether we are making things easy for our customers, that can be the number of problems they faced, and not only on the functional side, but also whether usability wise, the overall experience, whether it has improved or it has degraded, so that they rate on multiple parameters on how they find this particular release or a new product feature. And then that really goes from a decent number of users back to a product team, so that they can actually act on a valid feedback. And it is not the case of one loud customer making, changing the perception of a particular release or a product. So something like that also can help a lot to really see how we have done.
Right. Example, support requests that we get at the time of release. What do you think is the future of testing is, and where tester roles, like how do you see the tester role advancing? How will we fit in to this new changes and advancements that are happening?
I'll start. Testing is not going to go away. Software is getting increasingly more complex. The number of abstractions that we commonly use now that we have zero control over is only ever going to keep increasing, such as using the cloud, using more libraries, downloading stuff from npm, etc. Not to go into the AI rabbit hole, right? But AI is going to be an incredibly complex thing to test, especially outside of things like LLMs. Like if you go into some of the AI that's likely to come, where you're not going to know really how it got to the answer, or it's going to be incredibly hard to find out how it got to the answer. That's going to bring back the real exploratory testing side of what a lot of testers do. It's like putting that answer into context. I said, here's all my finances and my income. Can I have a mortgage? AI says no. Like, what? Why? Right? And then we're going to have to, like, obviously there'll be logging and stuff, there'll be investigation, but it won't be a clear cut, it's broken or it's not. It's going to have to be, how did it get to that answer? What data led to it thinking that? What decisions did it make? What has it learned in the last 3 months that suddenly biased it to think that I can't have a mortgage? Like, it's going to get incredibly complex in that space. So I think as a community, we have a lot of advantage in that we've done a lot of work in that space. There's training materials, there's lots of blogs and resources. So I think the testing is absolutely not going to go away. It's going to continue shifting, just like software development shifting, just like everything else is shifting. So yeah, I think the need to have quality software is going to increase as well, as I said earlier, because of competition. Testing plays a big part in that. Systems underlying are going to get more complex, more complicated. So yeah, the need to do good enough testing is going to be there. Who does it? Again, like I said, it depends on the team's makeup, but whoever does it doesn't matter. The need for it to happen at all is not going to go away. Who does it is definitely going to keep changing and shifting.
Nicola, what do you think will the future of testing roles look like?
I think that, what Richard says is correct. I think the skills, what I would say is Anna earlier hit a nail on the head when she talked about around 2012, when the market changed a lot and people were getting rid of testers. And when they came back, they wanted them to be automation specialists. They wanted them to be agile gurus. They wanted you to have all of those skills that historically people just didn't have. They've been used to working on waterfall. We're seeing again what happens when the industry just changes on a dime. What I would say to everybody on here is do not be complacent. After the last time this happened, a lot of people thought, oh, they're hiring QAs again. I don't need to worry about being an automation specialist or anything. I've got time to think about this. I can think about what I want to do. This time round, it's different. Everything is shifting around us and people are going to be caught out again. Like Richard said, the way that AI is changing industry and technically, it's changing everything, the world, right? We need to be aware of the different skill sets that we might be able to bring to the table. We have to start thinking about how we can be more rounded technically, but also bringing in some other skills. And I feel like a bit of what Richard was saying about alluding to education in his previous answer, I feel like the education part is going to come up again. I feel as though there's been a lack of ability to use any kind of real testing skills that we've had just to get product out the door. But I think there's going to be a call for us to start to use some of those more old school testing skills that we had around being able to really understand what it is that we're testing and using techniques to test that and thinking cleverly about how we can test things, still adhering to the fact that we need to get product out of the door quickly. And then again, what Richard said, who does that? It's debatable, but we will be there, I'm sure, to coach and hold everyone's hand and make sure that they get good quality work out the door. But we just need to be aware that the skills are changing, the nature of what we do is changing, and please don't just sit back and wait for things to happen. Be proactive in your choice of skills that you're learning, and think outside of the box as well, because those roles are going to start to come up that may have titles you've never heard of, but look at the roles, look at the skill set and see if you could potentially match it, and you're just opening up the opportunity for different types of roles that still involve testing.
Sure. Mahesh?
Yeah, I think the same part which Richard and Nicola said, right? Like,
yeah,
the need for testing is going to be there, and the expectations from testing teams or whoever is responsible for that, dedicatedly doing more testing compared to the other functions, that is same, like help us build quality products faster. But how you reach that conclusion of how you move between that entire process, that had changed. For example, okay, if you're traditionally taking 20 days to tell us that if this release is good to go out or not, or if it has a specific risk or not, now those same things can happen in 3-4 days, because the entire regression cycle, that's where we saw the best positive impact of automation. Obviously automation impacted a lot of other things that we didn't want, like it is more in people's head that okay, it can replace the entire cycle, but it is like how you do and how you reach the end conclusion, and whether you're telling people that okay, this can go out or not, that has really changed. So testing is going to be there, testing will stay, but the roles as we see in the market, those are definitely changing, and those are changing very rapidly. In last 2.5 years, I haven't seen a single job description. I'm sure there are many which I might not have noticed, but I haven't seen a single job description that doesn't demand automation as a skill set. So those things are changing. In one of the top unicorns of India, one of my friend is there, and he was telling that, okay, they previously had tested, so they saw that entire journey of like, they called it a testing team, then they called it automation team, then they hired a lot of estates and, called it a estate team. And now the thought process is, okay, we are paying the estates almost equal to what we are paying to the developers, and these people can code. So why not just merge the teams? So now these people are developing the features as well. But obviously they're doing better tester compared to the other functions that are there. So all these changes are happening. I feel a lot of changes that we see, eventually it starts with the big leading tech giants in the world. Then it goes to the top funded tech unicorns of the world. Like they adopt from these companies. And eventually that goes to the small and mid-sized product companies. And towards the end, it reaches a lot of service-based companies of the world. So the change always starts from there, and that change is happening. So the roles are rapidly changing, and that is not going to be the same. So previously, if tester or testing role was sort of demanding that 5 skills, now it will just do 7, 9, and that will keep on changing. The only hope, and so far we see that, is that okay, if this person can really test well, that demand will always stay there, and that is still like we see in decent proportion that people are still looking for those skills apart from the automation and everything that they are looking for. So that's a positive side overall.
Okay, great. So how do you see QA communities evolving in the future, and how, what are your next conferences that you're planning with all these changing QA landscapes? Can you tell a little bit about it, Anna? What's your next conference?
So my next conference is in October, is in Caribbean. And I choose it because I feel that we as testers, global testers community, we need to talk. I think this year is the year when our profession will change. Like we're facing the drastic changes, and it's not because we're driving those changes, it's the industry driving. And it came with the ChatGPT. I think, and I tried to talk to multiple people who work as testers, as test managers, and I feel that they are very reluctant to embrace this opportunity. I would say it's opportunity. I am seeing, and the reason I'm talking about that is I see other industries, how they embracing this tool, ChatGPT. I know that it's not intelligence. It's not a smart thing that's sitting there and like become smarter than we are. It's not. I think most of the testers, if they don't know already, then go learn what it does and how it develops its intelligence, okay? But I think that as a tool, it will be the tool of the present and the tool of the future. And if we just say, oh, but we're smarter than that, it's not gonna work. It's not working with management. And that's exactly what happened when we started with automation. And as Mahesh is saying, there is more and more technical skills are needed. It's not because we don't want to do it, and we kind of like, yes, you don't need to do it like really well if you know how to work with the automation. You could be a customer of automation. When I was a test manager, I didn't develop all my automated test cases myself, but I was a customer of it. It means that this tool works for me, gives me the status of the build. It needs to be working when I need it. And this is really important for me to have this tool as efficient as it can be. I feel that the same we're facing right now with ChatGPT. It's definitely a tool that is used by development. And if you know more what development do, and I have a lot of developer friends, and they say that this job, developer job in 2023, completely changed. They don't write code anymore. They debug the code written by ChatGPT. What they need to do is to have more skills in computer science and in logic. So you need to understand what mistake could this ChatGPT produce, because as I said, it's not smart thing. It works on different principles, but they're using it and they don't write code anymore. They debug the code. And this is, I think, what we will be doing as well as testers. And I am afraid that, I'm really afraid. I feel that year 2023 is like, it's changing everything. It's changing everything for testers. And even if you don't want to do it, don't want to talk about it, you kind of like try to stay away from it. It will come to you. It's like, you know, it's a thing. It will come to you. It already came to different professions. It's changing the copywriter's profession, writer's profession, developer's profession, designer's profession. It will change testers as well, drastically change. Let's talk about it. My conference is about that. Testers, QA, let's come, and as a community, let's talk about what opportunities we have, what problems we're gonna encounter, because this thing is coming and it's gonna be pushed on us. If we're not taking it ourselves, it will be pushed on us by management. And how can we evolve with this, using it as a tool, and get ready to use it as a tool and come to your management and say, hey, I am ahead of the curve. I am more marketable than everybody else out there because I know how to use that thing. I'm using it. So come, we're gonna brainstorm a lot. The whole idea is for this conference is come up with the set of rules, set of opportunities, set of skills that we will need as testers going forward with this tool, artificial intelligence as a tool that will be accompanying us going forward.
And Nicola has to run to another conference, so I'll just let her leave now. And I know that Mahesh is working on TribeCon, so in Bangalore, India. And what is yours, Richard? What are you working on?
Our next conference, physical one, is Testbash UK in Liverpool. So there's about 300 people signed up right now. We're hoping for about 450. So that's our second year back. I think for your comment about the trend, I think the biggest trend I would like to see is, I think most people feel slightly recovered from the pandemic now. So I think it's time for communities to start doing more face-to-face initiatives. So whether that's meetups, whether that's smaller webinars online instead of the massive online kind of conferences that have been happening. I think now it's time to get a bit more personable again, encourage conversations, start chatting about some of the topics that Anna just mentioned. And yeah, just generally try and get people connecting again. Obviously, we don't stop the other online side of it. That's still massively important. But I think the trend going forward is we'll start to see meetups kind of rejuvenate themselves, more physical conferences of all different shapes and sizes, just to get people chatting again.
So for today, it was a great, insightful session. And I'm sure many of us we're worried about testing and how it was changing. So we've got a lot of insights from the community. Forces themselves. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you for joining Nicola, Mahesh, Richard, Anna, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lavanya. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.